All right, so this is something that happened over the weekend. Tributes have continued to pour in after the passing of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg in the United States. President Donald Trump has made it clear that he expects the Republican-controlled Senate to fill her vacancy without delay. Now, the iconic justice, who served in the court for more than 27 years, lost her battle to cancer at the age of 87 this past Friday. In a statement, Trump said the nation mourned the loss of a titan of law. Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton wrote that Ginsburg paved the way for so many women, while former President Barack Obama called her a relentless litigator and an incisive jurist. Here's Sherwin Bryce-Pease in conversation with New York Law School professor Penelope about the implication of Ginsburg's death.
Professor Andrews, good to see you, and thank you again for your time.
Good morning.
So I think there are two elements to this conversation, right? Paying tribute to an extraordinary life and an extraordinary jurist, and then, of course, the political implications of her passing weeks before this very crucial and critical U.S. presidential election. So let's try to cover both. I know you've met Ruth Bader Ginsburg, so tell us about your interactions with her and, of course, your reaction to her passing overnight.
Well, her passing overnight is a huge, sad loss for the country on a personal level as well as professional level. She was an iconic figure who was probably one of the most important architects of the equality jurisprudence of the United States Supreme Court. She became late in her life an iconic cultural figure, and as you know, 2 movies were made about her. She made the cover of Time magazine, countless T-shirts, posters, young people wanting to be photographed with her. So I think that, her passing is really the passing of a very, very important American personality and a global figure. I would say that she was probably the most well-known of American justices in the world. And for good reason.
Well, let me start there, right? Last night, just overnight, immediately you saw this spontaneous gathering on the steps of the Supreme Court. Someone in conversation with me likened it to what it could be a sort of the flower scenes you saw outside Buckingham Palace when Princess Diana passed. Why was she so iconic among justices past and present on the Supreme Court, given what you're talking about, this great outpouring of grief that we're seeing around this country?
Yes, I think she was important for several reasons. The first is that she, as I said, she was an architect of women's rights. As an attorney before she became a justice, she took to the United States Supreme Court some important cases that became landmark decisions on gender equality. The second is that the decisions of the United States Supreme Court loom large in the political and cultural life of the United States. So who becomes a justice is of great significance. So I think that her being there was important. She also managed to actually make being a justice of the Supreme Court cool. Her and Sonia Sotomayor in many ways made the court accessible, the decisions of the court. The fourth reason is that although Justice Ginsburg was a constant dissenter, her dissents actually became very important with respect to legislation that was passed. There was one very famous case, the Lilly Ledbetter case, in which, look, she was in the minority, she was a dissenter, but then the law was changed to, deal with workplace discrimination against women. And then I think the fifth is that the court has been the sort of site of so many of the battles in the United States around voting rights, around the death penalty, around executive privilege, and so on. So all of these have combined, at the beginning of the 21st century to make her this iconic figure, and she allowed herself to be accessible to people. I mean, it's quite exceptional, you're right, to compare it with Princess Diana's passing. I've never seen anything like that, where actually young people, all people, go to the court to lay wreaths, and I know that this is going to be happening for the next few weeks.
Right. I mean, some of the descriptions I've seen overnight: feminist icon, champion of liberal causes, a trailblazer in her fights for gender equality, even as a lawyer before she was appointed as an appeal court justice and then an associate justice to the Supreme Court. Her death, in many ways, Prof, despite this being a long life of 87 years, has sent shockwaves in progressive and liberal circles around the United States. Describe to us why it has been such a shudder for groups like that, especially in an election year.
I think it's been such a shudder because, as you know, the pandemic this year, in an election year, in which facts have sort of been a casualty of so much, or the truth has been a casualty, and Americans appear so divided and fighting for the life of the republic, fighting for the democracy. So who gets to the court is one of the parts of this struggle. And I think it was so shocking because even though she was ill, it sort of seems at this point, it seemed so inevitable, but people really, really were shocked because this was the last thing. The news in the last month, even when she was, when the court started to hear cases by telephone, she joined one of the decisions from a hospital bed by telephone. So we sort of had this image of this person persevering and so on. So I think that is why it's been such a shock. But also, if you recall, when President Obama tried to put his justice on the Supreme Court, the election year in 2016, the Republican Senate, led by Mitch McConnell, held off. So for 10 months, there wasn't a judge. This time, even before, just when the announcement came out, 10 minutes later, the discussion was, will Senator McConnell and the Senate try and fill
So
Justice Ginsburg's place?
Let me just remind our viewers what you're referring to there. Of course, President Obama, on the death of Antonin Scalia in February of 2016, nominated a replacement for that conservative justice, and Mitch McConnell would not give Merrick Garland a hearing in the Senate. He has quickly now said in a statement that President Trump's nominee, despite it also being an election year, even closer to the election than the Obama nomination in 2016, that President Trump's nominee will get a hearing on the Senate floor. This is gearing up to be a huge political fight, despite it already being a huge political fight in terms of this election already. No?
Yes, it will. But here's the thing, that there's never been it's 45 days to the election today. I saw a report last night, and I didn't have the time to check exactly who it was, but the shortest nomination process for a Supreme Court justice was 47 days. So I think that that's one problem. The second problem is that one doesn't want to go too much into the weeds, but the Senate could barely get together a program of economic redress and payments to people during this pandemic. And they can get together and confirm a Supreme Court justice in 45 days. Firstly, the height of hypocrisy. And then the problem is some senators are in some trouble. They're in swing districts. And it's unclear whether if they would go to vote for a new justice, how that impacts their chances. So Mitch McConnell wants a new justice of the Supreme Court. That's been his project for as long as he's been a senator, but he also wants the Senate to remain in Republican hands.
And of course, Professor Lindsey Graham, who is the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, is on the record as saying that he would not confirm any Supreme Court justice once the election process was underway in 2020. In fact, he said he would not confirm a Trump appointee if it was this close to the election. Do you think they'll backtrack on that?
Well, it's hard to tell with politicians. He may look at the situation and decide it's better to abide to what he said, or he may think that it's politically better to go in and go against his word. That's hard to tell. But I think I think the thing about Justice Ginsburg, a very, very important part of her legacy is that she was in many ways the female Thurgood Marshall, and I don't want to in any ways make her less than him. But Thurgood Marshall's life was about fighting racial injustice before he went to the court, and he shaped the jurisprudence of the court with respect to racial justice. Justice Ginsburg, for her, the fight for gender equality was her life. And even though she dissented, in the last few decades, she was such an important figure for gender equality. And that is the legacy that I think is the most important. So as we go into these fights, I think people should stop for a moment and really look at what we gained by her being on the court and what will happen when, a new justice is appointed.
Yeah, and the vacuum really that she now leaves. Let me ask you a final question, Professor. We talk so casually about this 5-4, whatever the numeration is, a split, the conservative-liberal split on the Supreme Court. This is antithetical to how we understand appointments to the Constitutional Court in South Africa. It's not about your ideological leanings, it's about your qualifications. It's different in the United States and complicated as a result of that.
Yes, it is, because the power of judicial review is so important, and because so many issues of significance in the United States, whether it's the right to own guns, whether it's voting rights, whether it's abortion, are ultimately decided by the Supreme Court. And so as a body, it's very, very important, in shaping the American democracy and the rights project in this country.
Prof, I'm so grateful for your expertise and that you share them with us. Thank you so much, very much indeed.
You're welcome.
Professor Penelope Andrews is a professor at New York Law School. She teaches comparative, constitutional, and international law and is a co-director of their Racial Justice Project.